Hello, I'm Gwen Eiffel, and welcome to the Washington Week Webcast Extra. I'm joined around the table by Dan Balz of the Washington Post, Joan Biskupic of Reuters, Pete Williams of NBC News, and Martha Raddatz of ABC News, an all-star cast. Martha's just back from a 10-day trip to Iraq, where she's been able to see with her own eyes how different things are in the country as it approaches the verge of political collapse. Political arguments at home aside, how different do things seem to you now than when you've been there as recently as January?
I was there in January, and I was going because the militants had taken over Fallujah. But the last time I was there with American troops was when the American troops left.
Right.
And the most stunning thing is to go back there with no real American troops on the ground, no combat troops on the ground, no, I mean, in a way, no help, no looking. So it is incredibly complicated when you get there. I mean, you feel a real sense of danger. You go to these checkpoints, you're stopped. I mean, in January, we were stopped at a checkpoint for 3 hours. You go here, there are militias all over the place, these Shiite militias all over the place. We spend but life goes on too. It's wonderful, and you can go out and you can see these Iraqi families. There was one Iraqi family I spoke to. Mother was Syrian, father was Iraqi. They'd moved to Syria during the worst part of the war in Iraq. And now, of course, they're back because of the terrible war there. And their children talk about explosions and these terrible things. You go out and the militias, again, are all over the streets. You also, and I can't help, going back, and I ride down that airport road, and which was called Route Irish, and think of all the people who are lost on that road, and think of the people who lost their legs, and there's such specific things for me when I look around Baghdad and I see where
Does it feel like deja vu? Everything is unraveling again? Can you feel that?
Oh yeah, you can definitely feel. I mean, I will tell you, it's frightening there. It is frightening because there are things blowing up all over the place. There was a gunfight outside of our hotel. There is a real sense of foreboding and a real sense of what can the Americans. I mean, we're not going to send troops back in large numbers. And you look at what's happening out there. We had 150,000 troops who were trying to stop the same type of thing that's going on now. We had 150,000 troops there trying to do that. And they're trying to do it with forces who are dropping their weapons and running, or the 300 Americans we're sending in. And, we talk over and over again that the airstrikes would be extremely difficult, and they would be. First of all, you have to have, as you well know, Pete Williams, you have to have an air controller on the ground to figure out that you've got the right target. And you're not taking sides, and you're trying your best not to hit civilians. So all of that is extremely difficult, but extremely depressing. And you get that sense from the Americans on the ground too, from people there, that it is as bad as it could be.
Thank you, Martha. I want to turn to Dan now and talk a little bit more politics. Today, the Washington Post had a pretty interesting story about the roots of this wealth problem that Hillary's been dealing with, which is how much money they've actually made since they left office.
It's an extraordinarily interesting story, and it's pieced together from the financial disclosure reports that Hillary Clinton filed from January 2001, when she became a senator, until she left the State Department. So there's 12 years of records. Bill Clinton made $104.9 million in that period, giving speeches, 542 speeches. We have an extraordinary graphic that our team put together that shows every speech. There's lots of little green dots, and you can see where he gave the speech.
When you hover over each
Does
dot.
he give the same speech?
It doesn't say that.
We don't have the text of each of these speeches. And they ranged from 100,000 or thereabouts to, I think in one case, $700,000. I mean, it's extraordinary. And the sort of average was 200, 225, something like that. The more we all dig in on this, I think the more problematic it becomes for them. I mean, it's, we've all said, I don't think people begrudge politicians who have money. I mean, we've had instances in this country of presidents who were very, very wealthy. But we also saw in the 2012 campaign that
How you earn the money matters.
Well, how you earn the money and the degree to which people believe that you understand them, whether you're rich or not. And you know, I think Secretary Clinton has responded in a way that she seems baffled by what all of this is. That she has led a life, in her estimation, started out, you know, without huge wealth, and they've worked hard. You know, they're the most powerful couple in the world at this point, perhaps.
Well, here's the other most powerful couple in the world, actually, the president, who we didn't talk about a lot tonight, but he's been done an interesting thing, and I want to play you a little bit of what he had to say today, because he seems to be engaged in a pretty, you know, rock'em sock'em pushback now against Republicans who this week said they plan to sue him for his executive actions. This is what he said today in Minnesota.
I'm not sure which of the things I've done they find most offensive. But they've decided they're going to sue me for doing my job. You know, I mean, I might have said in the heat of the moment during one of these debates, I want to raise the minimum wage, so sue me when I do. But I didn't think they were going to take it literally. They don't do anything except block me. And call me names.
Where's that frustration coming from all of a sudden?
Whenever he is out speaking at a partisan event, this resentment, this anger, this frustration with the Republicans, and particularly the House Republicans, boils over. I mean, they are so far apart at this point. There was an event earlier this week in which the President's Cup golf teams came to the White House, and Speaker Boehner was there, and he talked about Speaker Boehner and Vice President Biden being golf partners. After what we've seen this week, I can't imagine the two ever playing golf again together. There is, you know, for all of his frustration, there is anger on the Republican side and the conservative side that he has misused presidential power. Now, whether this is a serious suit is a question for the legal experts.
May I ask a quick question? Is there a chance here that this is, in his view, a safety valve to stop people who want impeachment?
In the president's view or in Boehner's view?
In Boehner's view.
Well, perhaps, although I think that there's so few Republicans who take seriously the idea that impeachment makes any sense politically or legally or otherwise, that I think that this is not a response to that. I think it is a response to the fact that they've seen him do things with the Affordable Care Act, they've seen him do things with the DREAM Act, they've seen him do things in other areas that they think are extra constitutional. And you know, there have been some conservatives who've written and made the argument that this is the case and that something ought to be done about it. And this was a response to that.
Well, here's a test of whether the Affordable Care Act is extra constitutional, and that's what we see. The one remaining big case that we're waiting for from the Supreme Court is the Hobby Lobby case, in which this company is actually challenging whether they could be forced to provide contraception under the terms of the Affordable Care Act. How much will however that debate comes out, define what this court did this year?
I think this could be where the rubber really meets the road. You've seen them take incremental steps in many of the other rulings leading up to this. So many of them were unanimous this term. I cannot imagine that this will be unanimous, and I think this is easily predicted to be 5-4. But just to explain what the Hobby Lobby case is in terms of what Dan just laid out, you know, we've had several cases up at the Supreme Court that test President Obama's regulations, for example, on the EPA, environmental and greenhouse gases. So it's not like his administration's actions haven't been challenged before the Supreme Court. And here we are again with another replay of a challenge to the Affordable Care Act, which had been broadly upheld in 2012. The issue here is whether two privately held for-profit corporations can get religious exemptions for the contraceptive mandate based on their owners' religious views.
You explain it so much better than I do, Joan.
That's why we're there.
That's your job.
That's right.
It's a living.
Yeah, right. We're so important in June, but and then we go away until October. But the big question is, is the Supreme Court going to suddenly say that these corporations have the kind of religious rights that individuals do? So it's a big test that plays right into the whole idea of this court maybe being more favorable toward corporations. And it brings to the fore, issues of reproductive rights, religion, the constant politicking over this 2010 Obamacare law.
Yeah, and the trouble is, if they want to try to find a middle ground, Chief Justice Roberts suggested during the argument that maybe you could say for companies like these that are family-owned, closely held, with strong religious views, maybe they get this, but then does Comcast, does Exxon get it? That's going to be a difficult line drawing. And the other thing is, if you say, well, yes, corporations can have religious views, then the inevitable questions become, what next? What else can they say we don't want to do on religious grounds?
Right, do you not want to do vaccinations, for example?
Well, the court's going to be very interesting about when this is all said and done. And we'll, at some point, we'll talk to you even if it's not June. We'll find out what it all means. Thanks, everyone, for the click. And we'll see you next time on the Washington Week Webcast Extra.